Hi, community. My name's Richard Noble. I'm a gay rights activist, but I fight for human rights. I want to talk about the Equality Act, which was just passed in the House today. The Equality Act was originally an idea by Karen Doring of the National Center for Lesbian Rights. And she posted on Equality giving her idea about adding sexual orientation and gender identity to titles of the Civil Rights Act: housing, employment, credit, etc. And we saw that, meaning me, Todd Fernandez, who's a lawyer, an organization called Get Equal, which you saw a lot of in the 2010s, 11s, 12s, with Dan Choi and being handcuffed to the White House to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that Obama eventually was successful at doing. So when marriage equality was being pushed towards the Supreme Court, everybody's focus was on that. And everybody's focus was on the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and, well, moving beyond, a little bit beyond the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell time frame-wise, getting Obama reelected to a second term. And after a couple of young male gay kids committed suicide, I decided that it was time to walk the rainbow flag across the nation. I have been to India. I studied Gandhi. I studied King and nonviolence and the civil rights movement and walking and Cesar Chavez. And it seems like every time a human rights issue came up or a civil rights issue came up, you saw marching in the streets. And I thought, what if somebody walked the rainbow flag, which is right here behind me, across our great nation in protest of discrimination and bullying and hate crimes and murder and the horrible things, reparative therapy to try to make gay people straight, etc., and got the rainbow flag unfurled across the Golden Gate Bridge and headed east over the Rockies, over the Northern Sierras, meeting with Native American tribes and speaking at schools and members of Congress and the White House, talking about this idea of a full comprehensive LGBTQ civil rights bill. Well, I'd like to say SOGI, civil rights bill. And SOGI simply means sexual orientation and gender identity. And a lawyer wrapped his idea around me from New York, Todd Fernandez, and sort of wouldn't let me go. We started this small organization in 2011 called Connecting Rainbows, Civil Rights Walks for America, where we wanted to do a lot of little civil rights walks, like people have been doing. And then I heard somebody thought about walking from Austin to Washington, D.C., and on that conference call I said, I'll walk the rainbow flag across America. And immediately Todd shared with me the Equality Pledge and what that meant and what civil rights laws we were going after to include the LGBTQ community and the SOGI community. And I'm all like, wow, that just, it makes sense. It's the truth, and it's equality and it's representation. So I thought, okay, I'm going to adopt this. So we wrote a proclamation for the city of West Hollywood called the American Equality Bill. And it had sexual orientation and gender identity in all of America's civil rights laws, and calling on the Declaration of International Human Rights and applauding Hillary Clinton's her speech, I believe it was in Geneva, on gay rights are human rights and human rights are gay rights. And just the momentum was there. It seemed like the right moment. So I packed my little apartment in Palm Springs, California, put it all in storage. I bought all this camping equipment, backpacks, tents, drafted this proclamation. I sent it to West Hollywood. They put it up on their agenda. And I made a date of March 12th, 2011 to get to the Golden Gate Bridge to begin a national civil rights walk across America. I had all my equipment. I said goodbye. I had a little party in Palm Springs. I farewell to everybody. I contacted some newspapers in San Francisco and West Hollywood, and I let them know what we were doing. I got to West Hollywood and the proclamation passed unanimously for this idea of an Equality Act, an American Equality Bill, which is what we called it. And then I went to San Francisco, and the Board of Supervisors and Scott Wiener and his colleagues there gave me a piece of paper with the city building behind it. It was red, white, and blue. They had all autographed it and signed it. It's now in archive at the University of Southern California's One Gay and Lesbian Archives, where they have all of my original proclamations and letters. So I got to San Francisco, and I sent out massive press releases and invited all these people. I went on a tour of the LGBTQ center there, and I went to a few spiritual meetings. Have a spiritual practice that I practice, and I slept on the sidewalk. I couldn't find a place to sleep. There was nobody there available. I'd asked a lot of people. And so I ended up rolling my sleeping bag out in front of the Harvey Milk Library in San Francisco on March 11th, and I fell asleep. And I woke up, and I went to the coffee shop on the Castro, got myself a cup of coffee, headed to the Golden Gate Bridge, walked across it, and I unfurled my flag on the north end of the Golden Gate Bridge. And that was the beginning of my civil rights walk across America for the LGBTQ community. I crossed the bridge. I thought maybe some people would be there, and nobody was there. And I had some binoculars, and as I was crossing the Golden Gate Bridge, I was looking at the park where I invited all the press and the community, the LGBT Community Center, and I let the San Francisco community know that I was beginning my civil rights walk across America. And as my binoculars were hitting the park area, I'm like, where is everybody? And lo and behold, when I got down there, there was nobody there. Eventually, a woman from E-Bar, I believe, it's a little LGBT newspaper in San Francisco, showed up with her camera and got a picture of me with the Golden Gate Bridge behind me. And I was literally in shock that I had given my life up for the LGBTQ community for a major civil rights bill, and nobody was there. But I still knew it was the truth, and I knew it was the right thing to do. I got all the way across the city to Pier 39. I got a ferry to Oakland, and I began my 2,864-mile walk across the United States with this rainbow flag right here behind me. Along the way, I spoke at schools and to newspapers, and carried this backpack, and I put up my tent. I slept in overhangs, occasionally a hotel. Angelica Kakayan, a friend on Facebook, was sending me money that I needed, boots. I went through 7 pairs of relatively high-end hiking boots. So my walk, I went over the Northern Sierras. I met friends along the way. I spoke at a few city council meetings and newspapers. And from there, I went Highway 58, Nevada. I did get up to Reno, and I got a proclamation from the mayor of Reno affirming the need for an Equality Act. And all along the way, I stopped in Sacramento and met with Mark Leno, Senator Mark Leno of California's staff, and they also gave a letter of recognition or something for this idea of a comprehensive civil rights bill. And it began a 15-month journey by foot across the United States for civil rights. And I got to meet the American people in the community and show them the bill that we wrote, called the American Equality Bill. That Todd Fernandez pulled together. And we had all these areas of civil rights laws that we wanted sexual orientation and gender identity added to. And the draft really looks like the Equality Act. The Equality Act is a little bit different. It's added a few more things, but it kept the body of our work. And I've had nothing but resistance from Representative Cicilline's office, like they don't want to talk or something. I did get a really good reception from Jared Polis. Barney Frank was a Congress member at the time, and he had an assistant, and they were like, you guys are not going to get what you want, or good luck. Like, they didn't really, they were personally supportive of us as activists, but this idea of a comprehensive civil rights bill, they thought it was a joke. The Human Rights Campaign laughed at us, like, please, we're not, that's civil rights doesn't work that way. Civil rights is piecemeal. And I'm all like, no, we want a comprehensive civil rights bill, an omnibus, we called it. So, over across Nevada and Colorado, and I broke the walk into a northwest and a southeast portion. So I walked the northwest, and then I took a bus to Del Rio, Texas, and then I did the southeast to Florida. So it was broken into two sections, northwest, southeast. That would be a line across America. Sort of in my own way. I wanted to walk across the South. I had a really good reception, getting proclamations in, even Mobile, Alabama. People are surprised I got a LGBT civil rights proclamation in Mobile, Alabama. So long story short, at the very end, I did get an invitation to Pride at the White House by Gadam Raghavan, who was working in the Office of Public Engagement. And I got to shake Barack's hand and Michelle. I told Michelle about the walk, our First Lady. She was jazzed about it and excited. Hillary Clinton, I think, was the most astounded when I told her about the walk. She was just like, what? Like, wow, like, amazing, incredible. So I got a lot of proclamations and resolutions for the Equality Act. The American Equality Bill was really, really successful. And I got home, and I got done. I ended in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, where they had built a stage, and there's like a little ticker tape parade, and it was really a great experience. And I spoke about love. I didn't even talk about my walk. I think I gave a 45-minute talk in Florida sunshine in Jacksonville, Florida, and I talked about love, and that the LGBT people are embodied divinity and love, and we should accept nothing but equality because we are equal, and the law needs to reflect that truth. So that was great. Long story short, I came home to Palm Springs, and I passed the first citywide resolution with Councilman Coors to support the Equality Act. It was during the weeks of the Pulse nightclub massacre, which was just heartbreaking. And God bless that community. So we passed the resolution for the Equality Act, and I did it all over the Palm Springs. I got a bunch of them, from city councils. More than anybody else. So I got the National Center for Lesbian Rights. I put it up on their website. And eventually I got to Washington, D.C., where Roddy Flynn and Congressman Jared Polis presented me with a certificate of congressional recognition from the entire LGBT Equality Caucus. That was really sweet. And I really want a pen when the bill gets signed in the White House. So the strange thing for me is that after Obama was reelected and marriage equality passed in the Supreme Court, Sarah at the Human Rights Campaign said, hey, let's do an Equality Act. Let's do a bill. And it got, conversed around the D.C. crowd, and Senator Merkley and Representative Cicilline wrote the bills that looked pretty identical to the one that I had walked across America, literally in my backpack. I walked that physical bill across the United States, and just praying every day, learning with Native American prayers, and I had a really good time. People were really gracious to me, and sleeping in different people's homes and along the highways and backcountry in the Rockies and on Indian land and along bayous where alligators were sunbathing, and through the mosquitoes of Louisiana and the horseflies, and through past a hanging tree in the south, and Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, the panhandle of Florida. I walked the rainbow flag open for 15 months to be what Harvey Milk said, be out, and not be afraid and coward, and have that rainbow flag open across the United States so that everybody could see that I was gay. I didn't say I'm gay. I'm like, hey, I'm gay, everybody, but I had that flag open, and it represented my being out to the American public for 15 months. And I walked in the rain, I walked through the snow, I walked through blistering heat. I went through a lot of different clothes, and I picked up a rattlesnake once. I didn't know that it could bite because it was a baby, but it just sort of wiggled its tail and was really cool to me. So anyways, thank you, rattlesnake. So yeah, I've been to the White House. I've met the president, and David Cicilline still says it's my bill, not my bill, but his bill. And then I'm all like, no, it's the activist bill. Us out there in the country, beating the drum, and educating people and changing the conversation to full equality. The people didn't want to hear full equality, and we were like, full equality, SOGI, full equality, full equality. It was our mantra. So now I have H.R. 5 here. It's the Equality Act, and I wanted to read it. Hopefully we have enough time. If not, I'll make 2 videos. But here it is, H.R. 5, and I'm going to read it. The H.R. 5 is to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and for other purposes. And it has a list of all the co-sponsors. That is a lot of co-sponsors. All right, so May 10th, 2019, additional sponsor, Ms. Gonzalez Cullen of Puerto Rico, reported from the Committee on the Judiciary with an amendment on May 10th, strike out all after the enacting clause and insert the part printed in italic. Okay. Also on May 10th, 2019, Committees on Education and Labor, Financial Services, Oversight and Reform, and House Administration discharged, committed to the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union in order to be printed. A bill to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and for other purposes, be it enacted, the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled. Section 1, short title, this act may be cited as the Equality Act, although we call it, us out here, the American Equality Bill. 2, findings and purpose. A, findings. Congress finds the following. 1. Discrimination can occur on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or pregnancy, childbirth, or a related medical condition of an individual, as well as because of sex-based stereotypes. Each of these factors alone can serve as the basis for discrimination, and each is a form of sex discrimination. 2. A single instance of discrimination may have more than one basis. For example, discrimination against a married same-sex couple could be based on the sex stereotype that marriage should only be between heterosexual couples. The second, the sexual orientation of the two individuals in the couple, or both. Discrimination against a pregnant lesbian could be based on her sex, her sexual orientation, her pregnancy, or on the basis of multiple factors. 3. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, referred to as LGBTQ people, commonly experience discrimination in securing access to public accommodations, including restaurants, senior centers, stores, places of or establishments that provide entertainment, healthcare facilities, shelters, government offices, youth service providers, including adoption and foster care providers, and transportation. Forms of discrimination include the exclusion and denial of entry, unequal or unfair treatment, harassment, and violence. The discrimination prevents the full participation of LGBTQ people in society and disrupts the free flow of commerce. 4. Women also have faced discrimination in many establishments such as stores and restaurants, and places or establishments that provide other goods or services such as entertainment or transportation, including sexual harassment, differential pricing for substantially similar products and services, and denial of services because they are pregnant or breastfeeding. 5. Many employers already and continue to take proactive steps beyond those required by some states and localities to ensure they are fostering positive and respectful cultures for all employees. Many places of public accommodation also recognize the economic imperative to offer goods and services to as many consumers as possible. 6. Regular and ongoing discrimination against LGBTQ people as well as women in accessing public accommodations contributes to negative social and economic outcomes, and in the case of public accommodations operated by state and local governments, abridges individuals' constitutional rights. 7. The discredited practice known as conversion therapy is a form of discrimination that harms LGBTQ people by undermining individuals' sense of self-worth, increasing suicide ideation and substance abuse, exacerbating family conflict, and contributing to second-class status. 8. Both LGBTQ people and women face widespread discrimination in employment and various services, including by entities that receive federal financial assistance. Such discrimination, A, is particularly troubling and inappropriate for programs and services funded wholly or in part by the federal government. B, undermines national progress towards equal treatment regardless of sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And C, is inconsistent with the constitutional principle of equal protection under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. 9. Here's number 9. Federal courts have widely recognized that in enacting the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Congress validly invoked its powers under the 14th Amendment to provide a full range of remedies in response to persistent, widespread, and pervasive discrimination by both private and government actors. 10. Discrimination by state and local governments on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity in employment, housing, and public accommodations, and in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance, violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. In many circumstances, such discrimination also violates other constitutional rights, such as those of liberty and privacy under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. 11. Individuals who are LGBTQ or are perceived to be LGBTQ have been subjected to a history and pattern of persistent, widespread, and pervasive discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity by both private sector and federal, state, and local government actors, including in employment, housing, and public accommodations, and in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. An explicit and comprehensive national solution is needed to address such discrimination, which has sometimes resulted in violence or death, including the full range of remedies available under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. 12. Numerous provisions of federal law expressly prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, and federal agencies and courts have correctly interpreted these prohibitions on sex discrimination to include discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex stereotypes. In particular, the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission correctly interpreted Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in Macy v. Holder, Baldwin v. Fox, and Lusardi v. McHugh. 13. The absence of explicit prohibitions of discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity under federal statutory law has created uncertainty for employers and other entities covered by federal non-discrimination laws and caused unnecessary hardships for LGBTQ individuals. 14. LGBTQ people often face discrimination when seeking to rent or purchase housing, as well as in every other aspect of obtaining and maintaining housing. LGBTQ people in same-sex relationships are often discriminated against when two names associated with one gender appear on a housing application, and transgender people often encounter discrimination when credit checks or inquiries reveal a former name. 15. National surveys, including a study commissioned by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, show that housing discrimination against LGBTQ people is very prevalent. For instance, when same-sex couples inquire about housing that is available for rent, they are less likely to receive positive responses from landlords. A national matched pair testing investigation found that nearly one-half of same-sex couples face adverse differential treatment when seeking elder housing. According to other studies, transgender people have half the home ownership rate of non-transgender people, and about 1 in 5 transgender people experience homelessness. 16. As a result of the absence of explicit prohibitions against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, credit applicants who are LGBTQ or perceived to be LGBTQ have unequal opportunities to establish credit. LGBTQ people can experience being denied a mortgage, credit card, student loan, or many other types of credit simply because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. 17. Numerous studies demonstrate that LGBTQ people, especially transgender people and women, are economically disadvantaged and at a higher risk for poverty compared with other groups of people. For example, older women in same-sex couples have twice the poverty rate of older different-sex couples. 18. The right to an impartial jury of one's peers and the reciprocal right to jury service are fundamental to the free and democratic system of justice in the United States and are based in the Bill of Rights. There is, however, an unfortunate and long-documented history in the United States of attorneys discriminating against LGBTQ individuals or those to be perceived as LGBTQ in jury selection. Failure to bar preemptory challenges based on the actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity of an individual not only erodes a fundamental right, a duty and obligation of being a citizen of the United States, but also unfairly creates a second class of citizenship for LGBTQ victims, witnesses, plaintiffs, and defendants. 19. Numerous studies document the shortage of qualified and available homes for the 437,000 youth in the child welfare system and the negative outcomes for the many youth who live in group care as opposed to a loving home or who age out without a permanent family. Although same-sex couples are 7 times more likely to foster or adopt than their different-sex counterparts, many child-placing agencies refuse to serve same-sex couples and LGBTQ individuals. This has resulted in a reduction of the pool of qualified and available homes for youth in the child welfare system who need placement on a temporary or permanent basis. Barring discrimination in foster care and adoption will increase the number of homes available to foster children waiting for foster and adoptive families. 20. LGBTQ people youth are overrepresented in the foster care system by at least a factor of 2 and report twice the rate of poor treatment while in care compared to their non-LGBTQ counterparts. LGBTQ youth in foster care have a higher average number of placements, higher likelihood of living in a group home, and higher rate of hospitalization for emotional reasons and juvenile justice involvement than their non-LGBTQ peers because of the high level of bias and discrimination that they face and the difficulty of finding affirming foster placements. Further, due to their physical distance from friends and family, traumatic experiences, and potentially unstable living situations, all youth involved with child welfare are at risk for being targeted by traffickers seeking to exploit children. Barring discrimination in child welfare services will ensure improved treatment and outcomes for LGBTQ foster children. B. Purpose. It is the purpose of this act to expand as well as clarify, confirm, and create greater consistency and the protections and remedies against discrimination on the basis of all covered characteristics, and to provide guidance and notice to individuals, organizations, corporations, and agencies regarding their obligations under the law. Section 3. Public accommodations. A. Prohibition on discrimination or segregation in public accommodations, sections 201 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000A, is amended. 1. In subsection A, by inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, before quote-unquote or national origin, and 2. In subsection B. A. In paragraph 3, by striking stadium, and all that follows, in inserting stadium or other place of or establishment that provides exhibition, entertainment, recreation, exercise, amusement, public gathering, or public display, end quote. B. By redesigning paragraph 4 as paragraph 6, and C. By inserting after paragraph 3 the following, end quote, 4. Any establishment that provides a good service or program, including a store, shopping center, online retailer, service provider, salon, bank, gas station, food bank, service or care center, shelter, travel agency, or funeral parlor, or establishment that provides health care, accounting, or legal services. And 5, any train service, bus service, car service, taxi service, airline service, station, depot, or other place of or establishment that provide transportation service, and B. Prohibition on discrimination or segregation under law, section 202 of such act, 42 U.S.C. 2000A-1, is amended by inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, before or national origin. So they're inserting. So right now it's race, color, religion, national origin. They're going to add sexual orientation and gender identity. Race, color, religion, sex, national origin, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Perfect. C. Role of construction. The Title II of such Act, 42 U.S.C. 2000A, at SEQ, is amended by adding at the end of the following Section 208, Rule of Construction. End quote. A reference in this title to an establishment, dash, quote, 1, shall be construed to include an individual whose operations affect commerce and who is a provider of a good, service, or program, and 2, shall be construed to be limited to a physical facility or place. Section 4, Desegregation of Public Facilities. Section 3018 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000B, A, is amended by inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, before or national origin. 5. Desegregation of public education. Definition. Sections 401B of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000C-B, is amended by inserting, including sexual orientation and gender identity, before or national origin. B. Civil actions by the Attorney General. Section 407 of such Act, 42 U.S.C. 2000C-6, is amended in subsection A2 by inserting, including sexual orientation and gender identity, before or national origin. C. Classification and assignment. Section 410 of such Act, 42 U.S.C. 2000C-9, is amended by inserting, including sexual orientation and gender identity, before or national origin. Section 6. Federal funding. Section 601 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000D, is amended by inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, before or national origin. Section 7. Employment. A. Rules of construction. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is amended by inserting after Section 701, 42 U.S.C. 2000E the following. Section 701A, Rules of Construction. Section 1106 shall apply to this title except that for purposes of that application, a reference in that section to an unlawful practice shall be considered to be a reference to an unlawful employment practice. Okay, they're really breaking it down. B. Unlawful employment practices, Section 703 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000E-2 is amended. 1, 2, and 3. 1. In the section header, by striking sex and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. 2. Except in subsection E, by striking sex each place it appears, and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. And 3. In subsection E1, by striking enterprise and inserting enterprise if any situation in which sex is a bona fide occupational qualification, individuals are recognized as qualified in accordance with their gender identity. C. Other unlawful employment practices, Section 704B of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000E-3B is amended. 1. By striking sex, the first place it appears, and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, is amended. 2. By striking employment, and inserting employment if any situation in which sex is a bona fide occupational qualification, individuals are recognized as qualified in accordance with their gender identity. D. Claims, Section 706G2A of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 2000E-5G2A is amended by striking sex and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. E. Employment by the federal government. Section 717 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000E-16 is amended. 1. In subsection A, by striking sex and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. 2. In subsection C, by striking sex and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. F. Government Employee Rights Act of 1991. The Government Employee Rights Act of 1991, 42 U.S.C. 2000E-16A at SCQ. Is amended. 1. In Section 301B, by striking sex and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. 2. In Section 302A1, by striking sex and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. And 3. By adding at the end the following. Section 305, Rules of Constructions and Claims, Sections 1101B, 1106, and 1107 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 shall apply to this title except that for purposes of that application, a reference in that section 1106 to race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, or national origin, shall be considered to be a reference to race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, age, or disability. That's what I'm talking about. All right. G. The Congressional Accountability Act of 1995, the Congressional Accountability Act of 1995, 2 U.S.C. 1301, ET-SEQ is amended. 1. In Section 201A1, 2 U.S.C. 1311A1 by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity before national origin. And 2. By adding at the end of Title II, 42 U.S.C. 1311 ET-SEQ the following. Rules of Construction and Claims, Section 208. Sections 1101B, 1106, and 1107 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 shall apply to Section 201 and remedial provisions of this Act related to Section 201, except that for purposes of that application, a reference in that Section 1106 to race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, or national origin, shall be considered to be a reference to race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, national origin, age, and disability. H. The Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, Chapter 23 of Title V, United States Code is amended. In Section In Section 203B2, by striking sex and inserting sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. 2. In Section 2302, A, in subsection B1A, by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity before or national origin. And 3, by adding at the end of the following Section 2307 Rules of Construction and Claims, Sections 1101B, 1106, 1107 of the Civil Rights of 1964 shall apply to this chapter, and remedial provisions of this title related to this chapter, except that for purposes of that application, a reference in that Section 1106 to race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, or national origin, shall be considered to be a reference to race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, national origin, age, a handicapped condition, marital status, or political affiliation. Section 8, Intervention. Section 902 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 42 U.S.C. 2000H-2, is amended by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity before or national origin. Section 9, Miscellaneous. Title XI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is amended, 1, by redesigning sections 1101 through 1104, 42 U.S.C. 2000H, ETSEQ, and sections 1105 and 1106, 42 U.S.C. 2000H-5, 2000H-6, as sections 1102 and 1105, and sections 1108 and 1109, respectively, by inserting after the title heading the following. Section 1101, Definitions and Rules. A. Definitions in Titles 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and... Am I reading that right? A. Definite titles 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, referring to individually in sections 1106 and 1107 as a covered title. 1. Race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, and national origin. The term race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity or national origin, used with respect to an individual includes A. Race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity or national origin, respectively, of another person with whom the individual is associated or has been associated with. B. A perception or belief, even if inaccurate, concerning the race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, or national origin, respectively, of the individual. And 2. Gender identity. The term gender identity means the gender-related identity, appearance, mannerisms, or other gender-related characteristics of an individual regardless of the individual's designated sex at birth. Including, the term including means including, but not limited to, consistent with the term's standard meaning in federal law. 4. Well, that was 3. 4 is sex. The term sex includes A. A sex stereotype. B. Pregnancy, childbirth, or a related medical condition. C. Sexual orientation or gender identity. And D. Sex characteristics, including intersex traits. 5. Sexual orientation. The term sexual orientation means homosexuality, heterosexuality, or bisexuality. B. Rules in a covered title referred to in subsection A. 1. With respect to sex, pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions shall not receive less favorable treatment than any other physical condition. And 2. With respect to gender identity, an individual shall not be denied access to a shared facility, including a restroom, a locker room, and a dresser room, that is in accordance with the individual's gender identity. And 3. By inserting after section 1105 the following. Section 1106 Rules of Construction. A. Sex. Nothing in section 1101 or the provisions of a covered title incorporating a term defined or a rule specified in that section shall be construed. 1. To limit the protection against an unlawful practice on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, or a related medical condition provided by section 701K. Or 2. To limit the protection against an unlawful practice on the basis of sex available under any provision of federal law, other than that covered title, prohibiting a practice on the basis of sex. B. Claims and remedies not precluded. Nothing in section 1101 or a covered title shall be construed to limit the claims or remedies available to any individual for an unlawful practice on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, which is including sexual orientation and gender identity or national origin, including claims brought pursuant to Section 1979 or 1980 of the revised status 42 U.S.C. 1983 and 1985, or any other law, including a federal law amended by the Equality Act, regulation, or policy. C. No negative interference. Nothing in Section 1101 or a cover title shall be construed to support any inference that any federal law prohibiting a practice on the basis of sex does not prohibit discrimination on the basis of pregnancy, childbirth, or a related medical condition, sexual orientation, gender, or identity, or a sex stereotype. Okay, Section 1107, claims. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, 42 U.S.C. 200 B.B. ETSEQ, shall not provide a claim concerning or a defense to a claim under a covered title or provide a basis for challenging the application or enforcement of a covered title. Housing. 10. Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. 3601 ETSEQ, is amended in Section 802, 42 U.S.C. 3602 by adding at the end the following. Gender identity, sex, and sexual orientation have the meanings given those terms in Sections 1101A of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Q. Race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, handicap, familial status, or national origin used with respect to an individual includes 1. The race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, handicap, familial status, or national origin, respectively, of another person with whom the individual is associated or has been associated. And 2. A perception or belief, even if inaccurate, concerning the race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, handicap, familial status, or national origin, respectively, of the individual. 2 again. In Section 804, by inserting... that's 2 again. In Section 804, by inserting including sexual orientation, gender identity, after sex, at each place that term appears. Okay. 3. In Section 805, by inserting sexual orientation and gender identity, after sex, each place that term appears. 4. In Section 806, by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity, after sex. 5. In Section 808E6, by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity, after sex. And 6. By adding at the end the following. Section 821, Rules of Construction. Section 1101B and 1106 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 shall apply to this title and Sections 901, except that for purposes of that application, a reference in the Section 1101B or 1106 to a covered title shall be considered a reference to this title in Section 901. Section 822, Claims. Section 1107 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 shall apply to this title and Section 901, except that for purposes of that application, a reference in that Section 1101 to be a covered title shall be considered a reference to this title in Section 901. B. Prevention of intimidation in fair housing cases, Section 901 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. 42 U.S.C. 3631 is amended by inserting including sexual orientation, as such term is defined in Section 802 of this Act, and gender identity, as such term is defined in Section 802 of this Act, after sex, each place that term appears. All right, Section 11, Equal Credit Opportunity. A. Prohibited discrimination, Section 701A1 of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, 15 U.S.C. 1691A1 is amended by inserting sexual orientation and gender identity after sex. B. Definition 702, section of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, 15 U.S.C. 1691A is amended. 1. By redesignating subsections F and G as subsections H and I, respectively. 2. By inserting after subsection E the following. F. The terms gender identity, sex, and sexual orientation have the meanings given those terms in sections 1101A of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. G. The term race, color, religion, national origin, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, marital status, or age, used with respect to an individual includes 1. The race, color, religion, national origin, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, marital status or age, respectively, of another person with whom the individual is associated or has been associated, and 2. A perception or belief, even if inaccurate, concerning the race, color, religion, national origin, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, marital status or age, respectively, of the individual, and 3. By adding at the end of the following. J. Sections 1101B and 1106 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 shall apply to this title, except that for purposes of that application. 1. A reference in those sections to a covered title shall be considered a reference to this title, and 2. Paragraph 1 of such section 1101B shall apply with respect to all aspects of a credit transaction. C. Related to state laws, section 705A of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, 15 U.S.C. 1691DA is amended by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity after sex. D. Civil liability, section 706 of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, 15 U.S.C. 1691C, is amended by adding at the end of the following. Section ABCDEFD 1. Section 1107 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 shall apply to this title except that, for purposes of that application, a reference in that section to a cover title shall be considered a reference to this title. And Section 12, Injuries. In general, Chapter 121 of Title 28 United States Code is amended. In Section 1862 by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity after sex. In Section 1867E, in the second sentence by inserting including sexual orientation and gender identity after sex. 3. In Section 1869A, a subsection J by striking add and at the end. B. In subsection K by striking the period at the end and inserting a semicolon, and C. by adding at the end the following. L. Gender identity, sex, and sexual orientation have the meanings given such terms under Section 1101A of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and M. Race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, economic status, or national origin used with respect to an individual includes 1. The race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, economic status, or national origin, respectively, of another person with whom the individual is associated or has been associated, and 2. A perceived or belief, even if inaccurate, concerning the race, color, religion, sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, economic status or national origin, respectively, of the individual, and 4. By adding at the end the following. 1897, Rules of Construction and Claims, Sections 1101B, 1106, and we're at the end here, and 1107 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 shall apply to this chapter, except that for purposes of that application, a reference in those sections to a covered title shall be considered a reference to this chapter. B. Technical and conforming amendment. The table of sections for Chapter 121 of Title 28 United States Code is amended by adding at the end the following. 1897 Rules of Constructions and Claims. So yeah, H.R. 5, report number 116-56, part 1 of Bill. And there you have it. So that is, well, that's the end of it. So this is the Equality Act, H.R. 5, otherwise known as Equality Act. So there you have it. I don't know if anybody else has read the Equality Act online for you, but there you go. And SOGI Civil Rights Now. Those are the, is it not focusing? The buttons that we wore and gave away as I was walking across the United States. So yeah, so there was a lot. That's a very technical amendment to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, housing credit. I really like the area of perceived sexual orientation or gender identity or color, race. You could just, how many times has somebody been perceived to be gay and discriminated against when they weren't even gay? So doing so, discriminating against somebody perceived to be something that they're not in breaking, housing laws is not acceptable. So I'm very proud of the work of Senator Merkley and Representative Cicilline and the human rights that this is. HR, Human Rights, House Resolution. And I really do want a pen. I really did walk 2,864 miles for this bill to be written. Again, before my walk, nobody was saying sexual orientation and gender identity in a national conversation as a bill, as an omnibus civil rights bill to protect the LGBT community, but me and a lawyer. Some people over at Get Equal also. But by nobody in Hollywood was talking about it. Nobody in Washington, D.C. They knew I was walking. They knew I was on a civil rights walk. Newspapers reported it fairly. In cities like Houston, Mayor Anise Parker gave me a proclamation for... they gave me a Richard Noble Day, which is not what I wanted. I just wanted an Equality Act Day, a civil rights bill. But in the content was the civil rights laws that we're talking about here. So I don't want this to be lost to history, and I don't think that Representative Cicilline even knows who I am at this point. Actually, he does, I think, or the Equality Pledge. That we had an Equality Pledge, right? So we had all these pages and pages of logos of organizations that endorsed this civil rights bill, and it was just everybody. Everybody endorsed it, and the Human Rights Campaign knew what we were doing. The organizations around the country, The Advocate wrote about us. Obviously, I was on the call to the White House all the time, with Gadam Raghavan and a couple of other people they filtered through, saying civil rights, we want full federal equality, we want it now. We're tired of discrimination, we've grown up with it. So there you have it. There's a lot more to this story. I just have, here's one of our pictures. So this was sort of across the United States. Here I am backpacking. That was Sacramento. So this was Trinity Dog. She did half the country with me. It's just, I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of photos. Of the walk across America. And, one day I may tell a story. So legalized gay. Here I am walking through Oakland at an Obama in the window. Stand with Obama. Matthew Shepard. So when I was in Boulder, Colorado, Congressman Polis came to my lunch, and a transgender person befriended me. And she drove me up to where Matthew was killed. And I cried, and I took flowers, and I said a prayer. And actually on the stick where Matthew died, so this is the rainbow flag. This is a staff that I walked across the United States with. But this is, you see that? That's barbed wire from the fence system where Matthew was killed. And a lot of trinkets. People just added stuff to my staff. I have gold in here from the Virginia City. I've got red earth from the Black Hills of South Dakota. Seth Walsh's name is carved in here. It just has a lot of history, this thing here. Native American prayer wheel. Some guys got a Buddhist wedding in Salt Lake City, and they put that on there. this gay couple. So it was really cool. And then at the end of the walk, Gilbert Baker, who created the rainbow flag, this was given to me. And there's a signature there. He's passed away. So yeah, that's hand painted. So I have a lot of trinkets. I got a flag from South Africa that was personalized to me. So it's been a great experience. And I've lived in Palm Springs since 2011. But the gay community here hasn't acknowledged, I guess I'm a nobody. So, which is cool, I guess. There's all these award shows and pride parades, and you'd think I would be somebody's, hey, you want to march in the pride parade? I'm like, yeah, sure, of course, right? Go Equality Act. I can't wait for it to pass the Senate and get to a president's desk. I don't know if it'll be this Senate and this president. I'd kind of prefer not having this. I sort of wish they would have waited. I really don't want Trump's signature on my Equality Act or our Equality Act. But all biases aside, what I'm after is civil rights. So if it passes through the Senate and it gets signed into law, it's the law of the land, and I will accept it. And I just want to say that before my walk, I suffered from addiction, and I was a homeless gay kid, and I tried to take my life because I was just in so much pain. And I spent 5 weeks in a coma at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital. I woke up with a machine and all these tubes, and it was a really serious thing, and I couldn't move. I was paralyzed, and I went through therapy for a month and eventually learned to walk again and write, and I got my full faculties back and walked across the nation with a gay flag. And for all those kids and those transgender people, the people that are discriminated in employment, and people that are afraid to come out, and service members and people around the world that suffer even hangings in murder and tragic human rights violations. I walked across America for you because I really do believe in love, and I do believe in equality, and I do believe in freedom. We all, with climate change and the things that are going on our planet, it's the struggle is real, like they say. So I just want to get this bill signed and done. And right now I work for a Climate Reality Project as a volunteer, the chair of Riverside County, and I was blessed to be trained by Al Gore last year for 3 days. So I'm really a part of the green movement, and it's sad to see 1.4 billion cattle are grazing right now for milk and slaughter, and those are just cows. And what we do to the rainforests, and it's I don't know that I have a lot of optimism for humanity, that we just plow and plunder and take over, and without regard for other species. Or I think that we're changing, though, with solar and wind, nanotechnology, hydropower. I know the singer Moby has a really cool vegan restaurant in LA, and I do believe that people are taking notice, and cities are going renewable with their energy, and all the car manufacturers are now creating electric cars. So there is hope. I just hope it's quick enough and soon enough, and that we all have respect and compassion for each other and for all living things on this planet, and that we make it. It's really scary what we're faced and challenged with, and we really need to like they mobilized around World War II. All the industries were working towards defeating Hitler and bringing peace again to the world, and all the manufacturers were making tanks and all the stuff that they needed for the war. And I think that if we mobilize, that we can do that for our planet and save it. I know we can. We just have to have the will to do it. People told me I would be killed walking across America with a gay flag. And after 2,864 miles in 15 months, I wasn't punched once. As a matter of fact, I was received and welcomed and cheered on and encouraged, and people were very, very good to me. And there's so many co-sponsors of the Equality Act. It's really a nice thing. So I hope that members of Congress, for David Cicilline or Senator Merkley or whoever signs the Equality Act, sees this video. Please share it with your friends. It is a real story. There's a lot more behind the scenes with this story, but I've never told it on video. My name is Richard Noble. I am a gay rights activist from California, and I am the first person to walk a rainbow flag across any nation in world history, calling on a comprehensive civil rights bill to protect the LGBTQ community. It's been a pleasure to tell you my story and to read you the Equality Act, and I look forward to more conversations with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.